Okay. Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Um, Working on a painting of Prague. I forget which session this is, but that's okay. Um, so, to kind of go back over where I was at on this one, started out pretty much getting everything drawn in and then started working on blocking. Now, I still am somewhat working on blocking, which is basically getting these big features in where this one mass has a yellow, this church has got this clock tower, if you will, has um, a different color of yellow. This dome behind it, a different color. So that's just like the starting point with blocking in these roofs. You can see that there's not a whole lot of detail to them. It's just really, uh, how shall I say, is to just give you a reference point that once you once you go into detailing, you have kind of a guide of where to go. So down here, working on the cobblestone, trying to work on some of those pink and some of those yellow hues, kind of reflecting off of the smooth stones of this cobblestone street. Now, what I've got going on, you can't see it, but over here I've got basically a photograph of this scene. There's a lot more stuff in here, cars and stuff and people. That's just not going to come out. But what but what is going to happen today is we're going to work on these windowsills, and so where some of the road is quite frankly reflecting some purples and blues. We kind of have the same thing going on with the windowsills. They're they're reflecting some of this hue up in the sky. So that's that's really what we're working on today. It's just putting in more dots down here, little splotches here, and then working on these windows. Um, that should help start pulling some colors together and really giving it a little a little more life. Because right now it's kind of pretty sporadic. Like this this trolley system that's running on the rails, like there's some things here that need to be added on this track. There's so many little details, but what we're what we're shooting for is enough of an impression of what things are that we don't go over detailed. Now, I'll give you an example of over detailed. Where would that be necessary? Um, Probably like if you wanted to depict someone wearing a specific type of dress from a balcony, or maybe a close up of a man with his hunting dog, and the guys maybe requested that painting where the dog looks like his dog has splotches, etc. But outside of outside of portrait painting, just landscapes and these kinds of things, there's something to be said about chasing your tail on detail. You can chase your tail on detail all day long. I think what's more important is that you hit the mark by, I wouldn't call it, it's not about getting it good enough. I think there comes a point, depending on the styles, like these brushstroke styles that I've got going on here for the tops of this dome. That might that might end up being a pattern that echoes through the whole work. Another examples would be like if you see comic books and how there's a pattern. The artist has found a way to draw the characters, put them together, and that in that way that they do it, there's a style, right? And um, whether I think everyone has some artistic ability, and I think most people would be able to understand. I There's just something about the style that you do that clicks with you, and I say that to make a point. If you go if you focus on detail too much, you might end up being outside your style, and then it changes, or quite the opposite could happen. Maybe in the process of detail, in the process of chasing your own tail, you stumble across a style of brushstroke, a type of paint, different colors, how you apply it, a lot of different things. You might stumble across something that's you. Um, Developing a signature, for example, over time, um, when we sign something, there comes a point where we might establish a good signature. Okay, so what am I going to apply on the palette today? So I've got a couple colors here. Sorry if my head chops off the top here. Let's start out with where I'm at. So I'm in a different room this time, and I'm also in a room where I probably let's do this. Yeah, that'll work. So what I'm trying to do is I've set up this room, this part of the room to just be the workspace indoors. No adverse lighting from outside, and I've got a overhead lighting, normal fluorescent tubing, and then I've got um, another set of lights, one projecting to me, and then one kind of projecting up at the top of the ceiling, just giving some all around light in the room. Don't know how the echo is. I'll review the video later and see how the echo is. There should be enough stuff in here to absorb those sounds. So what we're going to work on today are basically some blues. So going over here to my palette, I've got some titanium white. That's going to be basically what I'm used to lighten things up. Now, I know you can't see this. I'll show you the palette in a moment. I'm going to use some carbon black. I say again, some carbon black. The carbon black is for the opposite. We want to pull those hues down, darken them up, make some gray. Okay, so I'm going to use some premix colors here as well. Because I found that with doing cobblestones, or stones in general, like light crab gray works pretty good. And the reason I'm using light crab gray is, or these variations of blues, is because I basically want to reduce the time it takes to mix. All right, blue gray, I could spend more time trying to play with colors, figure out what does what, and that's fine. I could, but there's the question. Okay, like, all right, Jeff, what do I do as far as other colors go? Well, I'll show you I'll show you here in a moment what are the what are the two ways we can go. I would call them options because you're really, it's not an option if you're doing both. Okay, it'll make sense in a moment. Remember that it's not an option if you're doing both. All right, we got some cobalt blue, and then I've got some phthalo blue. Now the phthalo blue, that is quite pretty much. There we go. Yeah, just want to make sure we get the bottom of this right here, and that we can get the top of that right there. All right. Oh, I dropped the paint. I dropped the paint. All right, and then we use some phthalo blue. Phthalo is very rich in color. Very rich in color. I don't know if you can see that color, but. And then a very deep red. You can use some cadmium red. And the cadmium red is going to, well, you know what? No, we're not going to use cadmium. We're going to use crimson red, which is a dark hue as well. Very, very dark red, almost like a burgundy. But it doesn't take much. Now, let's go over the palette real quick, what I've got here. All right, so getting it a little closer. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start from here and kind of work around. So I got this carbon black and then titanium white. Obviously together they're going to make gray. I got light crab blue. I've got a blue gray. I've got a cadmium blue. And then I've got a phthalo blue. And I've got a crimson red. Now, when I'm going to use a number 8 dagger brush today. Now, when we talk about making different colors, there's two ways to make these colors, right? That you can blend colors and whatnot. One is you can buy them blended, or two is you can make them. But I've found that sometimes what I like to do is have both options. Even in some cases where, so I'm going to take some of this crimson red, and I'm going to take some of the phthalo blue, and I'm basically going to make like a deep purple. And when I do that, I can then use that deep purple along with some titanium white, and I can line it up. Now, as you can see, it's a little different. I made a much richer color than, say, this one right here. But what I've found with these pre-mixed colors is I'm just giving myself two, again, not two options, because if I'm using both, they're not options. It's the ensemble. The advantage to having the pre-mix of these colors is to get you to get those, to address those shades and tones without having to spend the additional time mixing colors. The colors that you are mixing typically are going to be, and with landscaping, are going to be the ones that you're continuously using If your method is, you want purple clouds, or you want pink hues, or you want an orange sunrise, orange sunset, um, some picturesque African sunrise or sunset, whatever the case may be, you're going to have that go-to, and you can mix pretty well, and you can adjust it up. But when you start going into the details of cobblestones, etc., it can it can be a time saver to have premix. It can also add a little bit of depth, because now you actually, instead of getting things muddy, you have a consistent, solid pre-mixed color that isn't, like, for example, like when I brush here, you can see it's not fully mixed. So depending on where I'm grabbing from this portion, I could be grabbing different hues, right? Whereas if I grab from this without mixing at all, I know if that's the tone I want, and I know exactly where I want to apply it. I've taken all the guesswork out. I don't have to worry about it. How far deep down is my brush going that I'm getting into that premix? Now I know that sounds like a lot of detail for just painting, but that's okay. Um, that's why I'm doing this video, is to kind of explain some of this methodology. Okay, so I made that. Um, I'm gonna lighten that up, and I'm also gonna put in um, some of my linseed oil. And again, as I with linseed oil, you can get the refined where there's no yellow tint. You can get stuff that has yellow tint. It really depends on what you want. If you're doing portraits, I guess you probably want less yellow tinting. Okay, so now I've got a nice deep blue hue here, or I'm gonna call it a blue hue. I'm gonna call it kind of like it's almost like baby blue. And I think what will also be nice with this baby blue kind of hue that I'm making right here is I'll actually be able to adjust some of these pre-mixes as well. So that's another advantage of pre-mix. If you have pre-mixed colors, and you're trying to get to something faster that varies with this color of blue, this cobalt blue, you can get there much faster. And certainly what's in these paints can make it difficult. Like, what's in this paint is a different material than what's in this paint. Most paints today, some form of, I guess, ground marble mixed with pigments and then oil added. And I've seen some different products that use different things, but yeah, it's pretty neat. But to get these things, to get those colors, I mean, there's a process. So all right. So I know I've got up here, I've got uh I've got 4 windows that I've got to be able to see here. And I know that these windows have some decoration at the top. So I'm going to start with just this. I'm just simply going to swag at it. Now, I am paying attention to what the angle of the window is and its scale to a known point. I know that I have a ledge right here, and I know that this window takes up about 3/4 of that space. I also know this windowsill is going to have support frames in it, and that's fine, and all the other details. I'm not there yet. You know, this is blocking again. This is just blocking. Okay, I also know that I'm going to need to follow this pattern right here, and in the center line, I have that window, I have that window, and then I have this window. And this window comes to the edge, and it seems a little bit longer. I think it's because it's probably a double pane. So I'm not going for perfection. I'm just getting a general idea of where the window needs to be. Because I know that I can correct over time. Now, if you're doing an acrylic, here is the advantage of doing acrylic. With an acrylic background, I'm using oil. When you use an acrylic background, you know it's a water-based paint, and you can pretty much paint right over once it's dry. Now, it might take several layers of black or of white in acrylic to go over what you messed up, but all in all, you can make those corrections pretty quick, and the paint dries pretty quick. This with oil, one could find themselves kind of chasing their tail for a bit, okay? Because you're talking about what I'm doing today is going to take 2 to 3 weeks to fully dry. Now, why is that important? Well, as we discussed in a previous video, I did all these yellows first. And it's been more than 2 weeks. In fact, it's been close to a month and a half, I think, but maybe 2 months. But I don't want this yellow to be affected by blue, because then we're going to make green. So this needs to be fully cured or dry enough that it's not going to blend very well. That I would be able to, if need be, if I really need to, I could grab a paper towel and I could simply wipe up some of this oil. Can't do that if you've already got when it's wet on wet. Ain't gonna work. All right, so I got another set of windows. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're kind of in between, and they're in between these for some reason. So we're gonna go 1. I know there's one close to this pipe, this drain pipe. And I'm gonna go with there we go. Now, these aren't perfectly squared. I did a scene in Savannah one time, and it was done in monochromatic and just black and white and shades of in between, all the different grays and tones of gray, blue grays, brown grays, black grays, just very monochromatic. And I was dealing with houses on the street, trying to get straight lines and windowsills, window ledges, supports in a windowsill. Like how many panes are in there? Is it a 4 pane, 6 pane? Things like that. What I've discovered is when you are going to do structures like windows and door frames, balconies, porches, columns, these structures, really, um, it's it's not a big deal when you're first starting out. In fact, consider too when you're thinking about um, structures that have symmetry. You know, keep in mind, shade doesn't always present symmetry. Shade actually covers an item, an object, in a way that um, we can use that to our advantage. Now, you might say, well, Jeff, a lamp post will have some symmetry to it as shade. Not only the lamppost, but the shade of the lamppost will have some symmetry to it, um, or at least it will have a particular. We anybody who anybody with the gift of vision, as I'll say it that way. Anybody with the privilege and the gift of being able to see, or have had the privilege and the gift to see, know that when you have a lamppost in a different direction, and we're drawing something, we're painting something, or when the car is driving by a lamppost, you know kind of how that shadow moves. You may not think of it intently, but trust me, your brain knows that. So, but what doesn't have symmetry at all um, is things like trees, right? Um, Objects reflecting with on the window pane, um, animals that are moving about, right? A bird with its wings spread. Um, those other things. Now, what is the point of what I'm talking about? Don't forget that when you're painting, if you get frustrated with these angles and you get frustrated with the details, I it's okay. There's other things that are going to actually be that are part of reality. You're going to have things that are cut off in view from a object over it, an object reflecting upon that object, or an object producing shade onto the subject that you are painting. Those different factors could also be considered when you think about painting cobblestones and painting stones. I did one of Skellig Island for a good friend of ours, and there's a lot of stones. And think about that for a moment. I mean, that's just it's a lot of stones on Skellig Island, and the way that the steps come up and to do all the detailing, like it's it was pretty tough. And I found that where I was wanting to get so much detail on stones that I found out later, like, why am I stressing? I'll just shade and then I'll light and I'll shade and then I'll light. And I did that, I think, for about 6 or 7 sessions. And, I would work on the foreground, I'd work on the background, and, and even like the contrast of there's like this island off in the distance, and I needed that small island to have the right amount of color, um, and shade and hue to look like it's in the distance, and like kind of like I'm doing here, right? This has a much brighter color than this color, Now these will be closer to the same, but there's a fundamental difference in distance and what light is hitting what. That's what's giving our depth, right? Well, in this one painting I'm talking about where I was, trying to imagine if I was trying to do windows like this and get it perfect. I know that later I'm going to be hitting with shade and light and shade and light. I'm going to be hitting all these different windowsills. I'm going to have to put where they have each of these windowsills basically have a cross made out of paneling of this close to this color right here, and they're going to be in these. So I already should accept the fact that I'm going to be doing this for a while. If you approach painting that way, you won't be as stressed. Now, I'm not assuming most people would be stressed about painting. I'm just saying, for those that are on the fence about doing art, well, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could get it right. I just like to get things right the first time. I do too. And this is a very good therapeutic way to get over yourself on, well, I don't want to get everything right. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I notice I'm going to have, in these windows that are down on the next level, they're going to be somewhere, I think, if we have, there's going to be a railing, a roofing ledge, a drip ledge, a stone ledge. It's going to come up right about here. It's going to run to the pipe. And then we got window ledges here. And so now we're going to have our windows here. And there's quite a bit of space in between. There's a decorative archway, not archway, I don't know what you call it, but if you've ever been to, what's it, is it the Palace Square, the Palladio? I think it's the Palladio. Have you ever seen architecture, in Italy and in Vicenza? You know what I'm talking about. But we're going to have these really long windows now underneath some accented window dressings. And again, we're going to have another line come up here, and window ledges, and then boom, these long windows. So we're just going to do like that, going like that. What I have noticed about these windows is they're actually lighter than these. And I'm going to go ahead and put some white straight in there, some titanium white right in there, because I know that with these, I'm going to get those varying reflections from clouds up here. There wasn't a whole lot of adjustment on these. I will say though, if I wanted to blend, I could take some white like this and I could blend and get more of the top is now. There's somewhat of a common theme in the lightning, not lightning, the lightening of the top of these windows. There is a pattern there. It's not much of one. It's just faint. It's really faint on this picture. I can tell there's deeper, it's more deeper hues, darker tones, whatever. I don't care what word you want to use. You artists out there can spot check me on terminology. I'm be glad to learn. I just know it's brighter here than it is down here. And I know that these are going quite the opposite. These are actually getting a little brighter over in here. Now I've got there's going to be another pole that comes down this way and comes down. So I'm probably going to have to start right here. So, I noticed that the next window actually is a little darker. Again, I don't care about getting the exact color at this point. And then last but not least, one right here. So like, as far as the width of the windows, I can fix all that later too. If I really wanted to, I could literally paint this whole thing, all these colors, and just block in one big blue block, and then come in and then put more, this tan down there and knock it out. I could. Really, it really doesn't matter because we already are going to have to let the paint dry and do other things. So if it's going to dry, you can make a lot of corrections. Now, there are some exceptions when I'm talking about though, right? Like, you have to have enough layers on top of something to correct it that for you to see it, you have to get all the way up onto it, What you don't want to do is you don't want to like paint something here and then, oh, well, I'll just cover it up a little bit of this other color that barely covers it up, and then I'm going to call it good. Like, no, you know that's not going to fly. Maybe for a piece of art around the house for fun. Yeah, sure. Kids doing it, right? Okay, yeah. But when you're talking about working on a piece of art that's going to go in somebody else's home, they are going to be getting up onto it. Okay, it's not on a wall, put far away from prying eyes and customers. And if you ever gone to an art gallery, you'll know. Once you get up, to the painting, you can actually see the paint strokes. You can see some different things. You're like, wow, how does it all come together? When you stand back, you see it, right? It all kind of it does that. So, like, I have all these lighter areas right here. If I was to cover that up with black, it would cover up that white. But if I come back over with white, um, it's gonna that any color, brown, black, blue, green, anything that's much darker than that, you're gonna have to really go over with that titanium white to not get those things to bleed through, and because it's there, light is going through the oil onto the canvas, and it's coming and it's reflecting out. And it's reflecting out. It's reflecting through the pigment of the paint. If somebody has a different theory on that, let me know. All right, I've already got this brush kind of tuned in with this. Look what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna make some violet here, some pink. Okay, and the reason I'm gonna make some pink is because I know that on my railroad track or on my rails for these cable cars, this is one rail of a cable car. Here's the other one right here. I know that I've got some pink and violet hues. And I want to get some really, really good colors in here that change things up. And so I'm starting out with kind of a pink. I'm starting out with a pink to basically just get different splotches. That's all I'm doing right now is I'm going to create some different splotches. Now, I can take a break from that and I can actually, I'm going to use just I'm going to go and use just this is a number 4. And it's just, a simple pointed brush. Now, I know I'm not going to worry about getting the railroad track stuff figured out, but I know I've got this crab gray. So let's see. See if the set it. All right. Yep, there we go. All right, so now I'm working on this right here. I'm working on this right here. So what I'm going to do is, I already know I got some highlights in here. What I'm doing now is I'm working on these tones. This is the rail. And so it is reflecting light. It has different hues of its own. It does come out here and it does have some more violet colors to it. There are some darker colors to it. And so I'm kind of just blending them all in. We got some lighter blues. I can go some darker blues. I ran over here and got a little muddy. It's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I can simply do something like this. I can do this. I can go, and now the stone is just elevated. It's fine. I can even take that same color I just used and I can put it right here on this rail. So as I get more out this way, the rail changes more to like yellow. And then I notice also like this line right here is pretty much pink. It is dang near pink. It's not quite pink, but I'm just gonna go ahead and hit it up with this pink that I've made out of phthalo blue and crimson red and a little bit of white, titanium white. I just want to get this. I want to get these characteristics of what's reflecting off the ground. What colors are reflecting, I mean, the sky does, although I've made it very much more intense on the purples and pinks in the clouds. That will, I don't know where I'm going to go with that, but it is quite intense. But let's say that they weren't purple. Let's say they were orange. We had orange and yellow colors. Well, then we would get these orange and yellows down here, you know? All right, so now it's cobblestone time. All right, so I know at this point I've got a good size on these things. And I'm gonna just ever so slightly, just gonna start adjusting this. And it's gonna be this is gonna be splotchy like that for now. Now I also know that it's a little darker in one portion. So I'm probably gonna end up having to use two dagger brushes because now that I see I've got some colors down here that just need to darken up. If I, once you hit that, once you go in one direction with your tones, whether you go with titanium white to lighten it or uh, carbon black to pull it back down to dark, they're just, you are gonna chase your tail. So it's probably best um, to you could work from darker to lighter, but there's still when we're talking about blending this paint, it's not like you can necessarily, other than maybe some pros out there, and I've seen them do some amazing things with paint. I'm here to tell you, when you're my level, which is, I'm trying, um, and I've found that just going ahead and having a second brush um, set up to do the lights is fine. And then maybe there's an in between where eventually um, you go back to the darker brush that's been using the uh, carbon black or any of the darker tones. You can use that one for blending at the end. And that way, your other brush that maybe has been focusing on white hues and brighter hues, it retains that brilliance because you want to be able to maybe put a reflection somewhere, maybe a water line, a ripple in the water or something. It's hard to do that with the same brush that's been getting all mucky into the darker tones. But and they've also got some stones here. I'm really scratching that brush in. You know, you're scratching the canvas. Okay. It's not doing any harm. It's not doing any harm. All right. And I've noticed that we have like this. It gets a little lighter. Gets just a little lighter as it goes this way, and then there's more. There's more. These stones are going to be have more. They're going to be a little bit brighter in color. These right here. So as you can see, there's a little bit of variation in each of these. It's not quite the same. That's what we want with these cobblestones. I got it. These things are square. There is some symmetry to them, but I'm here to tell you, when you're trying to get these things to line up, and it's better to just get the flow of the colors, the primary, not primary color, probably there are certain color values you want to hit in a section. All right, so we just hit a spot where it had a lot of linseed oil in it. That can happen too. It's another thing to keep in mind when you're painting with things that have linseed oil. You might end up with these splotches that have a lot of oil to them, and then the rest of the tube doesn't. So you might end up with a different moisture in your paint. Why is that important? Well, because it'll get runny, right? The more oil you put into the paint, it's runnier. It'll take longer to dry. And there's things to be said. There are certain oils you don't want to use, but the linseed oil that you get at the art store, it's fine. Nothing wrong with it. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on a different pattern here. I got some other tones here. And now you can see that there's something going on here. There's a change. We want to see that. It's kind of abrupt, so we can blend that in, muddy it up a little bit. we can change the values of these, and we can just start to get it a little muddy. Muddy as in you're just really getting all these paints together to a point and it's like mud. You can use that as an advantage, and it can also be quite a disadvantage because then you basically making a big smudge, and that can be counterproductive. But as you see here, we're trying to. Like, I haven't changed brushes on this one yet because I'm fine with going with these darker tones. But to show you an example what would happen if I change brushes, another dagger, another number 8. Hasn't gotten muddy yet. Haven't mixed it with cobalt black. I'm going to put a white color on here. Now, this one has already been, handling different colors. This one, let's go with just the light crab blue. Is it light crab blue? No. Blue gray. Blue gray, all by itself. Okay? And boom, right here. You might not be able to tell from the distance on camera, but if you zoomed in, I bet you would. Like, that is pretty, it's screaming out loud. It's saying, I'm blue gray. Like, I'm one tone. No, that's not gonna work here. So we're gonna take this one's already been muddied up. Boom. Just like that. Okay. That's a nice thing about oil painting, in my opinion, because because of the viscosity. I'm going to try to loosely compare watercoloring with acrylic with oil painting. I'm not going to get into all the other ones. All right, watercolor. There's certain things you got to use and certain techniques so you don't have bleed over, or one color bleeds over to another. An example would be the colors of a petal bleeding over onto the stems in which the petals are growing from the bulb of the flower, and then from the bulb to the stem, and then you have the color of thorns of a rose bush. The thorns themselves have would have a little bit of a water runoff where the rich portions of the thorn would blend into the vine. You would have a means to allow that. Where watercolor, they'll use this. I'll have to look it up later, but basically, there's a line they can put like a really thin line with a marker flat around these rose petals and flower petals, whatever it is. It could be any shape, but you want that one thing to be one color or a blend of a color, a blend of yellows. We'll say like a sunflower, blend of yellows and oranges. But you want to dam that in so it doesn't run out. So they'll have like this thin line that goes around that item, and then it'll stay there. Acrylic, if you have half of, say you're mixing blue and red, and you're coming up with a purple, but the time of exposure of the blue acrylic versus the red acrylic, how long have they been sitting out open? Did you mix it immediately? What did you want to mix? How did you want to blend it in? Yeah, you can get some corrections, but I've noticed it can become splotchy, because I'm not that great at acrylic. I've done acrylic, but when you consider, I'm going to show you this painting here, what I mean about The advantage of oil, like with oil, like I can get what I want out of grabbing one splotch of paint and just smearing it and then smearing other colors of paint and just absolutely just going wild and getting that marble effect where light bends different ways. You know, what is around? Why is this green? Well, there's something going on. There's probably a plant nearby. I don't know. This is just a picture a buddy gave me and I painted it. Um, but to get this intensity and to get it blended like that, that's where oil is fun. And it's also what makes doing cobblestones interesting, in my opinion. Well, they're just cobblestones. Yeah, but they're just so interesting, in my opinion. They are. They're different shapes, they're different colors. It's like not one is the same. They're close to the same structure design. They might be pitted, they might be rusty, one might be more reflective than another, one might have chips on it. But I think what I like about cobblestones is you just get that light just dancing in different colors. It's almost pixelated. And I think pixelation also is a way that we can create some really neat details. Now, I got some of those a little lighter. I made a mistake getting those lighter. I can bring them in and get them darker. Okay. I can also get these in between areas right in here. This is what I'm trying to show you. Like right there. So I'm kind of like filling in those cracks. All right, with some black, some gray. Okay. I'm going to show you the intensity, what I'm talking about changing brushes. All right. Granted, this is still wet. Look at that. I can line that up. You might not be able to tell the details from that necessarily, but I just want to kind of show you. So let's say we go with, here's like a very square cobblestone. Mind you, I still got more to do, and there's a pattern. There's a pattern on these. There's going to be some blues. These things make like circles going down the sidewalk. There's like this. It's almost kind of like there's like these interconnecting circles where the right edge of the circle touches the left edge of the circle, and they just kind of go down all the way. All right, now, I told you, I'm at the end of a drawing or end of a painting, and I want to go bright. Well, then what I can do is I want to keep that one. I'm at the end. I am not at the end, but I'm trying to show you an example. If I was at the end, let's just use this flat brush. Got it right here. And I just want to hit tiny reflection somewhere at the end. and go just like that. Just put a little tiny reflection. Now, I haven't muddied it too much. I can go with another piece of cobblestone and I can go these are dry. And if I make a mistake or I want to blend it in, I can literally just take my finger and blend it in. Now, same thing now with white on a wet spot, right? Let's go with a darker one, right around here. Just want to do like, well, it is. I might leave those highlights there, I may not. I don't know. But you can see, that's the advantage of not using the same brush. Now, conversely, the dirty brush, I'm doing the same thing. I'm grabbing some white. Yes, I can go ahead and I can touch a little bit. Look, once I squeeze down the brush and squeeze the bristles on there, I'm already getting gray tones because, you know, it depends on the oil, how much oil is in it. If you got something like really, really runny, usually wet sticks on top a lot easier. If it's muddy and it's cakey, it just doesn't do its thing. I'll have to explain it in a different video. I'm a little out of touch with some of the fundamentals and some of the terms because it's been a while, but let's go on and press on with these. So at this point, I know that I'm going to continue adding some cobblestones out here. Fuzz. I've noticed there's kind of like a blue-gray kind of pattern that's going along this rail. And last time I did this yellow hue in here, I wasn't gonna get all crazy and fill it in. There's some more yellow to do. But currently as it stands, just wanna kind of start building up a little bit of a pattern. And that pattern has to do with the light. The pattern of light reflecting. It's really what I'm going for. Now I'm using the darker brush right now because I am intentionally going for these darker tones. That's a little intense, so we'll fix that. I mean, this can't. Here's another reason why it takes me so long to get a painting done. Is um, although I enjoy painting, there's only so much of cobblestones I can do in a day, and I think anybody would be able to appreciate that. Um, it does get a point that I think it's not boredom. I think it's just kind of like mental fatigue, where you're like, oh man, I've been doing this. I just want to do something else. You know, spreadsheets, for example. Yeah, pretty good at spreadsheets, but man, I don't want to do them all day long. That I dream about it. Now, I'd rather dream about painting than doing spreadsheets any day. But I guess the point is, if you want to really enjoy a hobby like this, it does come with pacing yourself. All right, so I'm gonna add some titanium white. I'm just trying to lighten up. I'm just trying to lighten up this gray down here that I've built out and that I've used for this area right here. And the reason I'm doing that is do something like this. Just see how I'm gonna fix those up. Bam. And look, basically, it's different colors in here. So really, at this point, it's just kind of like um, really just building it in. I mean, you could say there's not really a pattern here other than the light and how the light is reflecting off of these stones. And I guess you could argue the principle that having no pattern is a pattern. I don't know if that's true or not. I gotta think about that one. That's a deep thought. Having no pattern is a pattern. I don't know. No, there's nothing in the paint. It's just paint. I'm sure somebody will make that a quote, a slogan, and then and if what I said was absolutely dumb and everybody's dumber for it, then one, I apologize, and two, I earned it. But if I earned it, I want credit for that bumper sticker. No pattern is a pattern. I guess it would apply. Someone driving around aimlessly, clueless, on their cell phone is probably patternistic of certain behaviors. The inability to have a driving pattern could be patternistic of an individual's performance and behavior. Maybe that's why everything has a pattern, even though absence of what you think, even though they may not be patternistic. I don't know. I think we'll that thought to rest, and we'll continue talking about painting. So at this point, there is going to be quite a bit of one tone in here, and it's probably going to be most. Let's see if I can chase it down. I'm going to chase down this color. The color I'm going to chase down right here is primarily too much. I think it's that. It's close to the color I want to go for. I can get a little bit of crimson red in there. Nah. I think that's the color we want to go for right here. And so like it's going to consume a good portion of this area in here. And for that reason, now that I've chased down the color that I want, for that reason, I can actually go ahead and start blocking these in. That's what that allows me to do. It also allows me to sharpen this up. All right. I also have some portions over here. I'm going to have another pole. Another drain pipe is going to come down here and it's going to work its way somewhere around here. Is like this section right here. This is actually a lip that goes up to the sidewalk from the street. So, I mean, like you see cobblestone, this is where cars would come up and probably park in the side of a house or side of a building, you know. And so that's what this one is on the opposite side of the street. And it has a very shadowy, deep, rich gray, like it's not like the rest of this. But now that I've got my tone here and here that I want, boom, titanium white, put it in there. And we're gonna line that up. I mean, you look at this, it's chaos. That's what it's like doing stones. It's just utter chaos. All right, here's some of that bleed through. You can see where last time I was correcting my painting. The building went too far down. Remember, I was talking earlier about covering up. You can see here, this has kind of like this tint behind what should be the sidewalk. That's what happens when you only have one layer. So we fix it. I'm not using a whole lot of linseed oil today because I know that I'm going to have to come back and do more layers. And if I have real soupy paint, it's going to be a longer dry time. It's going to be a longer cure time. You may want to have it a little sticky. And when you're going to do the next layer, that's fine. But for something like this where I'm intentionally making a correction to the details, scale of a painting, where items have where objects have a hard start point and a hard stop point. Sidewalk, a sidewalk has a sidewalk in this perspective has a corner where it meets up with the wall. It has a spot that it meets up with the street. So that kind of detail has scale, you know. It flows. In this case, as you can see, it's flowing with the street. We're going this way. The whole reason that this painting is going this way is we're we're getting pulled into this direction to go to the focal point. Okay. In this area, we have a lot of dark purples. And it's getting really muddy now. That's okay. We want muddy. So we're going to start adding some grays that have quite a bit of violet in them. I can also say that there's some of that in this area here too. Get those darker colors pulled in here. So I'm really looking forward to getting this done. I've gotten lazy, um, but it's nice is when you're not given a strict timeline. Um, dude, it's nice. Um, because what that gives the advantage to the artist is that gives them the ability to really be in the zone when they're working on a piece. Like say you asked your friend, hey, um, I'd like you to paint this or that. Can you do it? It I'm here to tell you, there's some. I, I I know how long it would take me in the future to do, let's say, a painting of Croatia. And I may have talked about this before in a previous video, so pardon me um, if I'm being redundant. But I think it's important to understand. I think it's worth trying to understand. All right, we're gonna lighten this up a little bit now. When you have really detailed paintings, like a cityscape, I've used this phrase a couple times in this video, where like chasing your own tail. You are going to chase your own tail, and acrylic is the way to go for your baseline. Otherwise, go with a very nondescript oil painting where it's so chaotic that precision is not required. A city off in a distance is one thing. A city up close, no, 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 no. That takes some time. You know, 2 years. That's working diligently almost every night, maybe taking a few nights off, but we're talking, you put 4 hours in a night, and you have a full-time job. You got other things you got to do. You got other things you want to do, like, I don't know, maybe you want barbecue for the week. Um, 2 years for something this size of a city, right? 2 years. Now I've been working on this longer than that. But that's because this takes time. I only paint when I'm in the mood. I only paint when I think I'm genuinely in the mood to do it. Now, if I was painting houses for a living, like drywall, whatever else, yeah, doing that for a living, yeah. I'm not doing this for a living. I might one day, but even if I was, I think the idea about painting, if you're going to do this for a living, you know, you need to be able to knock some stuff out. So that's what's nice about landscapes. I can do landscapes. I'll give you an example. And it doesn't change the value in the work, but just want to kind of show an example. Okay. This one right here, Monteviale, is one of my favorites. All right. This is the original. Okay. You can get a print of this. I started out with basically tape on this, Krylon black paint, and just painted the snot. Got a really thick, silhouette of the horizon, and then took the paint off, and I had created these things. Actually, then I did all of the the blue, and I got the base of the sky going, and then I let it dry for a little bit, and I think the sky and the horizon was like one session, and then the sky, as in these clouds, these purple, then it dried, and then I came in and did the yellows, and it's just doing the yellow part, like this was probably the hardest part here and getting it blended down here. But this area right here was actually really easy. It was literally just be daring. Just be daring. Just literally just splotch it. It doesn't change the value of the work. It's the overall effect that you're getting out of all this, of all the things you're doing. This wasn't overly complicated to do. And it's very intense. It's such a drastic change. I mean, you got the dark sunset. You got Monteviale. I did some brush strokes to get some black paint up here, and I did paint a layer of black, carbon black over that acrylic. Okay, so it does have oil there, and I did these brush strokes just to bring up the essence of the town of Monteviale. Where they hear the church bells ringing at night, and then the pines, the tall cedars and pines on the horizon. Where the work was done in this was in the pattern of colors and how they presented themselves. The purples, yellows, oranges, a little bit of pink, deep blues, and even the hint of, the sun is still out, and somewhere the sun is hitting this cloud to where it actually still has white showing from what one would see at 28,000 feet, 30,000 feet. Okay. This is an example of where if you want to do work and you want to have work on the side, you can do paintings like this um, relatively in a shorter period of time than say this. And believe it or not, compared to the last painting I showed you, this one actually had less steps and um, had less sessions. I think this one was 3 sessions, and then I was done. Because the challenge on this one was go muddy, big splotches, make it intense. You know, so which brings us back to this style. This style of painting here, it takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of focus. And, all right. And I guess you could say conversely, or quite the opposite, to some degree, it takes no focus at all. Just know you got to get these little changes here and there. All right. Now I do notice it's getting a little, tacky. Not that kind of tacky. The paint is getting tacky. Not my attitude and not my painting skill. Talking about the viscosity of the paint, because it does, I mean, it dries. So you get it thinned out on your palette. It's gonna get tacky over well. I have no idea how long this video has been going. Maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I do not know. All right, so now that I've gotten it, I mean, now it's really muddy. And that's too muddy. We're gonna darken that up a little bit. I'm gonna add some crimson red to that. And now what I'm doing is trying to go for a really, really dark gray purple. And then bring it up a notch. Some titanium white, just a little bit. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. You can see how intense that is. That's dark. That will really, that'll almost break up the pattern a little bit. I don't like that. I don't like that color per se. So I need to get back. So here's what I do. It's nice and it's still nice and moist. I can take some of that light crab gray and get it in there. You'll notice it's marbling up because the crab gray is not as wet as what I put down. So it'll marble up. It won't stick on top. Okay. If I have wet paint, really wet paint, then I do this. This is already tacky. Boom. See? But if I try to fix that and correct it with something that's drier and put it on, it gets marbly. It just doesn't adhere. Now don't worry, we'll fix that stone later. I'm just using that as an example. That stone might end up being perfect. Well, time will tell. And that's the thing. Only time will tell where this painting is going in style and in presence. All right, so this whole area here that I've just made really dark, what I'm going to do here is it's going to lighten up just a little bit. And we just need to get rid of these lines. The reason you have to get rid of those lines is those ridges will actually be dried ridges. And when those dried ridges stay in place, what happens is it makes it very difficult to do more work if you have to brush over a big clot of something. All right. Now I know there's also some details to be said about this rail car. This rail car is going to get some adjustments anyways. I noticed a couple things off the bat that need to get fixed. So I'm not I'm not too I'm not too worried about this. I can even when I first started working it, just getting the right scale itself was quite a challenge, and it still needs some refinement. So now I'm at a portion of the painting where I got there's a little bit more consistency in one tone of color or another. And I'm trying to identify where does it need to pop and then where does it need to just kind of be subtle. Because obviously uh, as things get further away from us, there's less detail, there's less sharp edges, the tones detensify. This has really changed the whole aspect of things. It's even changed like where I know I need to work on the bus, like I can fix that, right? And I'll tell you, when I do this bus, I actually, when I adjust the bus, I'm actually going to correct it by working from extending the top up. I'm not going to even dare mess with this because I already know, looking at the bus, I know that it's where it needs to be. But I can bring up the white a little bit more and bring it down. And then I can also bring more red over in here to kind of get it to where everything needs to be. So I'm going to use the lighter portions and build it up. And it's just going to be a little. It's not a lot. We're talking bringing this up about right here and bringing this red into here. And so it's gonna take some adjustments, but it's gonna be okay. It's art. It's gonna be okay. I think it'll look really good where it needs to go, or where it's gonna go when it's done. I think it'll be a good accent to the home, and definitely will be a good conversation starter. I've got more windows to do, just so y'all know. I've got a lot of windows to do, but they're all down here. They're all downtown, and they're smaller, and it's going to be kind of like going from this color to this color. And so there's still quite a bit to do. But what I haven't been able to do yet is really get. I'm trying to get I'm trying to get a type of quality of detail to that the way it pops, out, the way it comes together. Like I was talking about earlier about the style. I I think I'm getting that there with these stones, and I think a more pixelated approach overall might be the way to go, but I don't know yet. Do not know yet. Just not there. But I do like this dark color stone that I'm putting in here. We'll detensify a little bit, line it up. We'll line it up significant. There we go. There it is. So what I'm trying to do right now is I'm using the tip of the dagger as kind of like, I guess I'm trying to retain a little bit of texture that, it's got cobblestones, but without definition and detail, just little, but texture. A cobblestone street has a texture. We're gonna fix this stone. What's also interesting about cobblestones is the way that they're laid and the way they're tilled will also reflect certain light. So if you have a cobblestone tilted towards a skyline that has a yellow, orange sky, it's obviously going to pick those things up. If that stone was tilted to the other way, it's going to reflect and somewhere in between or quite the opposite, say this brown wall. You see here, this brown wall and these objects here are reflecting off of these stones. But you'll see like some of these right here, if we put one like this, or even put one here and here, it's blending. And so what we're creating is this effect that each of these stones are tilted and roll a different. They're pitted differently. Um, they're positioned differently. They're angled differently. And so what that's going to cause is it's going to cause an overlap of reflection. So it's a complicated way of saying you need to have a little bit of bright and dark where they meet. It's got to come over both sides like a zipper. It's got to come across. It's got to zip. It's got to zip. Otherwise, just not going to look right. And I'll eventually figure this out right here. At this point, I can even all right. As I look at my drawing here, not drawing, as I look at the picture, I do notice that there is we're gonna go with more of a pointed brush now, some lighter colors, because what I'm noticing is up in here we do have some purple tones. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but there's a magpie outside. I can hear him. I've got a common European blackbird that hangs out in the yard. Like I can walk by the trees and he sits still. He doesn't move. Not not one of us doesn't move a muscle. He'll hang out with me when I barbecue or braai in the backyard. But he also likes to have fun on occasion and likes to fly out at shin height, going from one tree to another. And I swear he does it on purpose. And I think he likes to do it when my hands are full, like trash or something, you know. So there's some blue hues down here. There's some violet hues, and then also we're getting a little bit more of some gray tones, lighter gray, if you will. But yeah, there it is. Boom. And now it's popping, popping good. And we know that by this curve, these little. It's another technique here is if you work it, and you work it the same without adding paint, without adding any more. You just start where it needs to be dark and rich up front. It's always dark and rich up front. It's vibrant up front. And then it detensifies, changes in hue as it goes further out. You can do that with your brush by simply pressing and not reloading it and not reloading it and just keep going. You're using up the medium, and at the same time you can also change how much of the brush you're putting on there. Now, some people, some people. So I sometimes, when I paint, I might just use a very light brush, just a very light. Maybe I'm blending. Maybe I'm putting something together. Maybe I'm trying to create something kind of different, a texture, an effect. But if you change the pressure, you can change the shape, you can change the intensity, you can create more of a muddy image. Well, I say muddy, not one color. It's not one particular. It's just kind of all put together. You get a little bit of tones of this, a little bit of tones of that, like a stone, right? So I can do that right here. It's real muddy right here, but I can do this and boom, 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 and I get these sections that are just popping light in a different way, which I can do here as well. All right. So it's important that when you get done for the day, step back, take some time, to admire what you've done, you know, get an idea of where you want to go to next. Um, and your mind can change. Um, but it's good to have a plan, at least. I knew I was going to be working on this portion because that was the plan, and nothing else made more sense than to work on that. Now, I still have more windows to do and things of that nature, but I'm not doing that today. Um, I'll get to those another time. Um, I think today, um, if I recall, I wanted to do these blues and these purples um, in this phase of the painting to really get an idea of how is this going to affect everything else. Because I'm of the opinion that working on this cobblestone street and how I do it, the texture, the changing of light, the illusion of light, I think that's going to affect how I did everything else. If I started with all these structures and got into the details, I probably I could likely end up with a street that just clashes with everything else. Now, I think I have a pixelated theme that I'll be able to take that and run with it in these other areas. And yeah, so don't forget, step back away from your painting. I'll do that after I'm done recording. Take a look at what you've got and think about what you want to do next. Also, don't forget, if you have other work that's ongoing, right? And you see you got some colors that could be helpful that you've already got, don't forget that you can take some of the colors you got from on one piece, put it on another piece. After maybe you need a breather, maybe you had to take a lunch break, whatever. But this still quite a bit of oil paint. Um, Sometimes I have fun with these, and I do little 5-minute paintings, and just use a knife and a brush and a painting knife. I'll probably talk about this before, and just have fun with some canvas, and just you could also work on you know taking some of this and creating colors, practicing. So um, before you pitch it out and clean it all up, consider some other options with it. Okay. Well, that concludes this session. Um, I don't know what I'm going to do next. Probably going to be more windows. I don't know if I'll film that because it's really tedious. Um, it can be tedious. It can be a little bit of a challenge. But I think what I'll do, yeah, I might do windows next. I might continue to do windows, and yeah. So if I do all the windows next, then what's going on here? Hold on. Yep. All right, start recording. If I do all the windows next, I can get my scale all the way from here down to there and just get them the positioning where they need to be. And then I can work on the refinement at another day. So um, that would probably be what I do next. Let me verify. Yep, I'll do windows next and get all those distances to scale. And then from there, that will allow me to do better brush work on those structures, such as how much detail do I want to put on a trimming around a window, windows that are closer, have a lot more detail on trimming, windows that are further away, just some shade. So, all right, well, I hope you enjoyed this session of a painting of Prague. Session number, I don't know, I've lost count, might be 6. It doesn't matter. That's probably going to be another 20 sessions, maybe 30. But each and every one of them are worth it. And another day of putting oil on a canvas in a good mood. Happy paint on a happy canvas from a happy artist. And yeah, that's how I roll. All right, have a good day.